As previously stated in my Rewriting the Trial of a Time Lord video, hindsight is a wonderful thing. And it's very easy to sit here and point out the flaws in something that has already been finalised, but the majority of the internet does this, so I thought I'd give it a go. Only this time I'm going to do it with the 5 Doctors. But before I begin, I'd just like to say, I love the 5 Doctors. In fact, it's probably one of my favourite episodes, and that's from both the old and new series. But there are still a few things I would have liked to have seen done differently, and I can imagine, can't I? So here we go, Rewriting the 5 Doctors. The episode begins in black and white as a shadowy figure watches as the first Doctor says farewell to Susan. Once the TARDIS disappears, the shadowy figure activates the time scoop. Meanwhile, inside the TARDIS, Ian and Barbara confront the first Doctor about leaving Susan behind. There would be some clever editing splicing together the existing footage of Hartnell and new footage with William Russell, Jacqueline Hill and a stand-in for the first Doctor. The first Doctor would then say he wishes to have a moment alone, which leads to Ian and Barbara leaving for a second. Once alone, the TARDIS doors fling open and the time scoop claims the first Doctor, which leads into the 5th Doctor's intro credits. The 5th Doctor's scenes with Tegan and Turlough on the Eye of Orion would happen exactly how they did in the episode, with the 5th Doctor having his sudden attack of cosmic angst. We then cut to a recreation of the final scene from Fury from the Deep, or the first scene from The Wheel in Space, as the 2nd Doctor and Jamie talk about leaving Victoria behind. The TARDIS is set in motion, but once again the time scoop breaks through the force field of the TARDIS and abducts both Jamie and the 2nd Doctor. The 5th Doctor feels another pain in his chest and collapses shortly after reassuring Tegan and Turlough that everything's alright. We then cut to a recreation of the 2nd Unit laboratory scene in The Green Death. This is when the 3rd Doctor and Jo refuse to take the Brigadier's orders. Suddenly the time scoop picks up all 3 of them and transports them to the Death Zone. The 5th Doctor struggles again and asks his companions to take him back to the TARDIS. As they near the TARDIS, he tells his companions,
I have to find what? My other selves.
We then cut to a recreation of the 4th Doctor and Sarah Jane in the first TARDIS scene during Pyramids of Mars. But instead of that episode continuing, the time scoop appears and abducts the 4th Doctor and Sarah Jane. Back at the Eye of Orion, the 5th Doctor taps away at his console, but passes out shortly before the TARDIS lands. When Tegan and Turlough realise they've landed, they check the scanner, but only see a desolate rocky landscape, and they are unaware of where they actually are. Meanwhile, in the capital, the High Council of Time Lords, headed by President Barusa, is in session. They are aware that someone is messing around with the Doctor's timeline and have come to the conclusion that someone must rescue him, and that someone is the Master. The Master naturally rejects, so the High Council offer the Master a new regeneration cycle, which will be received once the Doctor's timeline has been stabilised. The Master accepts this offer and is given a copy of the Seal of the High Council, which is also a transmat recall device. He is then transmatted into the Death Zone. Meanwhile, the 2nd, 3rd and 4th Doctors realise they're back on Gallifrey and they are now trapped within the Death Zone. Each Doctor independently decides they must go to the Dark Tower, as they believe that's where they will find the answer to why they've been brought to Gallifrey. But whilst on their journey, the 2nd and 3rd Doctors come across the 5th Doctor's TARDIS. Inside the TARDIS, the 3 Doctors find 3 entrances for the tower, and decide to take an entrance each, but before they set off, they scan the area for their other self, only to find the 4th Doctor is talking to the Master. Suddenly, the 4th Doctor, Sarah Jane and the Master are surrounded by a group of Cybermen. They try to run, but the Cybermen attack. which causes the Master to be knocked unconscious. The Fourth Doctor finds the Master's recall device and he transmats himself, as well as Sarah Jane, to the Capitol. In the Capitol, the Fourth Doctor is given more information by the High Council. He realises something is amiss and opens the recall device, only to find a homing beacon inside. The Castellan is arrested as he had given the device to the Master, and his quarters are to be searched. Meanwhile, the Master is confronted by the Cybermen and he offers to help them in order to save his own life. Back in the TARDIS, the three Doctors decide to go to Rassilon's tomb alone, as the Death Zone is too dangerous of a place for any of his companions to be. But they inform the companions that once the tomb's force field has been deactivated, Turlough can bring the TARDIS to the tower. A box containing the Black Scrolls of Rassilon has supposedly been found in the Castellan's quarters. The scrolls combust before anyone can examine them, and Barusa authorises the use of a mind probe, much to the Castellan's horror. However, as the Castellan is escorted outside, there is a shot and a cry. The Fourth Doctor rushes out to find the Castellan dead, a gun by his hand, and the captain of the guard reports he was shot whilst trying to make an escape. Barusa refuses to allow the Doctor to return to the Death Zone and orders Chancellor Flavia to look after him. The three Doctors reach the tower and separate so they can each take an entrance. Little do they know the Master has also led the Cybermen to the tower. Back with the Fourth Doctor, and he voices his concerns to Chancellor Flavia. He says that while the Castellan was stubborn, he was devoted to his oath of office and could never have been a traitor, and that his reaction to the scrolls was not that of a guilty man, but sheer disbelief, and he suspects the traitor is still at large. Flavia decides to have a word with the captain, whilst the Fourth Doctor will speak to Barusa. Inside the tower, the Fifth Doctor finds a chessboard floor blocking his way. He quickly determines the chessboard is a trap, and electrical bolts will destroy anyone attempting to cross unless they find the safe path. The Master suddenly appears, warning the Doctor that the Cybermen are close by. Whilst the Fifth Doctor hides, the Master lures the Cybermen onto the chessboard and they are killed by the trap. Afterwards, the Master casually steps across the board, moving into the tower after telling the Doctor it's as easy as pi. The Fifth Doctor realises the Master meant the Greek letter pi, and that is the key to making it safely across the chessboard. The Second and Third Doctors encounter more obstacles whilst moving separately through the tower, with the mind of Rassilon toying with their emotions as they encounter previous companions. The Third Doctor meets Liz, and the Second Doctor meets Victoria. Also, the Fifth Doctor finds Adric wandering through the tower. Adric says he was also taken out of time, yet he somehow knows the fate that awaits him and blames the Doctor for not saving him. Each Doctor realises their companions are just phantoms who were created to halt their progress through the tower, and once the phantoms are confronted with the truth, they vanish with a scream. Finally, the Second, Third and Fifth Doctors reach the tomb, where they find the First Doctor is frozen in a single moment of time. Near the First Doctor is an inscription in Old High Gallifreyan, which once translated reads,
"To lose is to win, and he who wins shall lose."
The Doctors don't understand, which results in the Second and Third Doctors arguing over the true meaning of the inscription. Back with the Fourth Doctor, and he finds that Barusa has vanished from the Council chamber, but the guards insist the President could not have gotten by them, as it's the only entrance. The transmat is out of power, so the Fourth Doctor realises there must be a secret door and orders the guards to inform Flavia that the President has disappeared. After an intensive search, he realises that the Harp of Rassilon is the key and that a tune will open the secret door, so the Fourth Doctor starts experimenting. Back in the tomb, the three Doctors have realised that Rassilon had discovered the secret of immortality. He was also willing to share it with whoever overcame the obstacles to the tomb. Suddenly, the Master steps out of the shadows to claim immortality for himself. but the third Doctor uses his Venusian Aikido and knocks out the Master. The fourth Doctor realises that the tune is shown in a painting of Rassilon playing the harp. So he plays the tune, which opens the secret door. The fourth Doctor enters the secret chamber and finds the dark figure that has taken his other selves out of time is Borusa. Borusa is not satisfied with ruling Gallifrey for his lifetimes, as he wants to be President Eternal and rule forever. Like the other Doctors, Borusa has determined that Rassilon discovered the secret of immortality and he means to claim it. So Borusa abducted the first Doctor and sent him to the tower, forcing the other Doctors into the death zone to clear the way of obstacles for him. Using the coronet of Rassilon, Borusa overwhelms the fourth Doctor's will, forcing him to obey his commands. The third Doctor reverses the polarity of the neutron flow, allowing the TARDIS to transport itself into the tomb. Meanwhile, the second Doctor contacts the Capitol. The fourth Doctor answers, but is still under Borusa's control, and tells his other selves to await his and Borusa's arrival. Transmatting to the tomb with the fourth Doctor, Borusa paralyses the Doctor's companions with the command and tries to control the minds of the second, third and fifth Doctors. However, they combine their wills against him to free the fourth Doctor. As Borusa declares that Gallifrey will believe his word over the Doctor's, a booming voice echoes throughout the chamber. It is Rassilon demanding to know who disturbs him. Borusa steps forward to claim his prize of immortality, and whilst the other Doctors protest, the fifth Doctor holds them back, telling Rassilon that Borusa deserves the prize. Borusa is then transformed into one of the several stone faces carved into the side of Rassilon's crypt. He has found immortality, but not in the way he wanted. After asking the Doctors if they too seek immortality, all four frantically say no. The fifth Doctor asks Rassilon that they all be returned to their proper time, and for the first Doctor to be freed from suspended animation. Rassilon frees the first Doctor from the time vortex, and also sends the Master back to his own time. Rassilon then disappears, leaving the Doctors and their companions to say their goodbyes. Everyone is returned to their time zones, except for the fifth Doctor, Tegan and Turlough. Chancellor Flavia then arrives with the guards and tells the fifth Doctor that with Borusa's disappearance, the High Council has appointed the Doctor as the new President of Gallifrey. The fifth Doctor orders Flavia back to the Capitol, saying that he will follow in his TARDIS and she has full powers until his return. However, when in the TARDIS, he tells Tegan and Turlough he has no intention of returning. Tegan asks if the Doctor really intends to go on the run from his own people in a rackety old TARDIS. And the episode ends with the fifth Doctor replying,
Why not? After all, that's how it all started.
So as you can see, it's not a complete change from the episode, just minor changes like including Tom Baker and not recasting the first Doctor. Now obviously this is a huge what if, because as we know, Tom Baker didn't have any involvement in the 5 Doctors. But there's no harm in wondering what could have been.